So what sorts of things did you say that you look for when you go shopping for shoes? Comfort. What? Fit. Style. Anybody look for style? Okay, thank you. So, color. What? Narrow or slim. Thank you, Debbie. We're all going to pepper you with narrow and slim shoes. So, Mary, you said something that actually, I'm glad you said it, because one of my thoughts on that is when I go shopping for shoes, I look for all sorts of things, but it's kind of pointless if I don't look for a shoe that fits, right? If I don't look for a shoe that is my size, then it's really kind of a fruitless search anyway. And there's a lot of shoes over here even. They're not all the same, are they? Y'all have eyes to see, and so you can see that some of these shoes tend to be a little fancier than others. Some of these shoes seem like they're made for sort of more formal occasions, right? More buttoned up and that type of stuff. You know, others, man, real casual and different uses for these different types of shoes. Some look like they've been worn really kind of hard and are tattered and old. Some look pretty new. And they have different uses as we put on those shoes. There's something that's common about all these shoes, though, right? They're all empty right now. Every one of these shoes is just waiting for a foot to fill it. And so as we move into this next little time together this morning, I want you to begin with the idea of what the shoes are that God's put in your life. What are those situations that you stand in right now? What are the proverbial shoes that you're wearing? Some of them may look kind of formal and nice. Some of them you may see that the shoes that you're in your life right now, they feel tattered and worn. Maybe some of you, the shoe that you're in right now is just as comfortable as it could be. For others of you, it may be like trying to strap on one of those shoes that just was never quite meant to fit, and you're wondering, how is this going to work? Because we all find ourselves in different shoes in the course of our lives, and that's nothing new to us. People throughout all of history have been dealing with that. People who know God and trust God have been dealing with that. When they ask themselves the question, what do I do with this shoe that I'm wearing now? Do you ever feel like sometimes you're wearing a shoe and it's like, I didn't ask for this shoe. I don't really like this shoe. If I could pick, I wouldn't have picked this shoe. But how do I walk if I'm wearing it anyway? Maybe there's big shoes to fill. We're going to hear this morning about someone from the Old Testament. And part of what I encourage you as we read this part of a story is to not sort of relegate it to the, oh yeah, it's the Old Testament. It's like stuff that doesn't matter to us. This is God's working with people. As we go through the Old Testament, God's story of how he has worked with people who sometimes feel like they're in misfit shoes or who just aren't sure. And so we're going to read from the first chapter of Joshua this morning. It reads this way. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' assistant, saying, my servant Moses is dead. Now proceed to cross the Jordan, you and all this people. Let me stop for a second. I'm going to come back to this, but it's interesting to me that in God's speech right here, he just cuts to the chase. My servant Moses is dead. Now proceed to cross the Jordan, okay? So in this story, God doesn't spend much time coddling and sort of caressing Joshua. He really just kind of says, Joshua, there's stuff to do. There's shoes that you need to wear. It goes on. Proceed to cross the Jordan, you and all this people, into the land that I am giving to them, to the Israelites. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given to you, as I promised to Moses. from the wilderness and the Lebanon as far as the great river, the river Euphrates. All the land of the Hittites to the great sea in the west shall be your territory. No one shall be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not fail you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous, for you shall put this people in possession of the land that I swore to their ancestors to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, being careful to act in accordance with all the law that my servant Moses commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, so that you may be successful wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart out of your mouth. You shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to act in accordance with all that is written in it. For then you shall make your way prosperous, and then you shall be successful. I hereby command you. Do you notice, have you heard these words before? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened or dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. Be strong. Be courageous. Strap on those shoes. There's something to be done. There's somewhere for you to go. Now, if you don't know the story all that well, I want to kind of bring it into context. And even if you do know the story well, it may be good to be reminded of what's going on here. So, the scripture referenced this guy named Moses, kind of an important guy. Moses had been leading the people of Israel all the way from leading them out of enslavement in Egypt into their wilderness wandering, pointing them toward a promised land. Moses was this person that had led with fidelity and faithfulness, that was pointing the people to God all along, to the way God would provide for them, for the way that God's hand was in it. And now, after coming through some of those hard times in the desert, you remember last Sunday we had Blues Sunday, and we talked about walking through those times of disappointment and sorrow and hurt. And now here the people are at the precipice of entering into this promised land. But Moses is dead. Think about that for a minute. The people had been wandering so long that for many of them, Moses was the only leader they had ever known. And now Moses is dead. Could be a good time, if you were Joshua, to lament a little bit, right? Could be a good time, if you were Joshua, to be scared. And maybe we could imagine that he was, and that's part of the need for God to say what he did. Because God says to Joshua, Moses is dead. Now go. There's work to be done for you. Your story's not finished, Joshua. Far from it. There's shoes that are waiting to be strapped onto your feet for you to lead my people. Go. These are fateful steps for those people, and they're not to be taken lightly. It's brand new territory, right? Entering into a place that they had never been before. Now, granted, they had been wandering and anticipating, expecting, entering into this place, hoping, pushing toward the promised land. But still, when you stand on the edge of it, you look and you see new territory. And that can be really scary, can it? New and different can feel really frightening. And good grief, Joshua is tasked with following an epic leader. Not to trivialize it, but Moses is clear, like first ballot Faith Hall of Fame kind of person. Now, there's not going to be much speculation on whether we as people of faith, the Israelites, would have looked up to Moses as a leader. And now Joshua has to follow in those footsteps. Joshua has to step into those really, really big shoes. It's hard sometimes just to lead, period, isn't it? And whatever shoes you're wearing right now, God is calling you in some way to be a leader as you wear those shoes, to demonstrate to others what faithfulness and fidelity looks like. Now, your shoes that you're wearing right now might not be real fancy. You may not be strapping on shoes that look like what Joshua had to put on. It may just be as simple as, God, how do I be a good husband or a good wife? God, how do I be a faithful employee? God, how do I be a good citizen? God, do you want me to impact change in the world? God, how do you want me to be nice to my neighbor? If that's the shoes that God is asking you to step into, are you leading as you step into those shoes? Stepping into the shoes of a great leader can be really hard. Do you remember a cat named Simba? Literally a cat. Like, do you remember the Lion King? And do you remember Rafiki? Such a great character, that kind of sage, old, wise, goofy, guy that when Simba, the young lion, as he had lost his father, the epic Mufasa, and Simba is wrestling, how do I step into those shoes? And do you remember the scene where Rafiki sort of gathers Simba and he goes bounding through the forest and over and under branches, and Rafiki says that line, "You follow Rafiki, he show you the way." That sounded a little like Yoda, didn't it? So anyway, Rafiki, Yoda, I show you the way. See, all streams come together. But if you remember the scene, Rafiki leads Simba to a place where they look up in the sky, and who shows up there? Mufasa. Mufasa comes and visits Simba, who is waiting to step into those shoes, those daunting shoes, those scary shoes, those shoes that Simba himself thinks, I don't know that I can wear these shoes. I don't know that they fit me. And part of what Mufasa reminds Simba is, remember who you are. Step into those shoes. Remember who you are. Part of this story this morning with Joshua is God's way of looking at him and saying, remember who you are. I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. I will never let you fall down. I will be with you every step of the way. I have given you the law that you can follow, and you should not let it depart from you. Don't swerve to the right or to the left. Always let it be on your lips. Remember who you are. Do that, Joshua, and the shoe's going to fit just fine. So let's say for you and me, whatever those shoes are in your life, let's say you choose to step into them. And there could be several things that happen if you choose to do that, right? We're all human beings. And so sometimes some of us may find ourselves confronting some fears. I've already kind of given voice to some of those that may step in. What if I step into these shoes and what if I don't measure up? What if I'm not really cut out for this? What if I screw it up? You ever had that thought? Oh, what if I screw this up? What if I get found out and maybe I'm not as strong or as good or as natural a leader as sometimes I put it out there that I am? What if I fail? You ever have some of those fears as you're trying to put on those shoes? What if this doesn't work out? And the words that came to Joshua 3 times are the words that come to you this morning. Be strong and courageous. What if I mess it up? Be strong and courageous. What if I don't know what I'm doing? Be strong and courageous. It takes strength and courage to not make too much out of those doubts and fears. Strength and courage to strap on the shoes that you step into. Be strong. Be courageous. God's not going to fail you. That's one side of maybe what can happen if we choose to strap on those shoes, right? Those fears and those doubts can creep in. And I think that's part of what we learned from this, is that they were probably creeping into Joshua's mind. And God knew that, and that's part of the reason that he says 3 times, be strong and courageous. But then some of us, maybe we don't wrestle so much with that side of the coin. Maybe we wrestle with the other side of it. Well, you know, it's about time that they recognize my leadership potential. Maybe we're waiting to step into shoes, and the whole time we're thinking, I'm going to be so much better than that person who preceded me. I'm so much more gifted. I'm so much more natural. I'm so much smarter. I'm so much more talented. I'm so much. Maybe part of that coin isn't the what if I fail. Maybe part of that coin for us is, how could I not succeed? I'm gifted and I'm pretty awesome. My shoe looks great and unblemished, and nobody could question it. Maybe that's part of what we wrestle with as we look to step into certain shoes. And what would God tell us then? Be strong and courageous. Well, so you might interpret that like, well, strong and courageous. That sounds like stepping in with all of that and kind of beating your chest. And I'm strong. Look at how strong I am. And to that, I would say God is saying it takes strength to bridle your pride. It takes strength and courage to be humble. It takes strength and courage to not believe the hype about yourself. Now, don't hear me wrong. I'm not saying that we should all walk around sort of like beating our backs and, we're horrible. But it's good to keep ourselves in check. Be strong and courageous, and recognize that sometimes strength and courage can't exist with pride and self-elevation. Did you notice how God instructed Joshua? Keep yourself grounded. Be strong and courageous, Joshua, but let the words of the law never depart from you. You better stay true to it. You better have faithful words on your lips. Keep yourself humble, Joshua. As we look to strap on all sorts of different shoes in our lives, God is telling us, whatever the shoe looks like, be strong and courageous and stay faithful. It's fascinating to me that at this juncture, this critical point where they're going to go in and possess the promised land, that at the same time God is saying, be strong and courageous. He doesn't follow it with words that would accompany a great warrior going into battle. Be strong and courageous and meditate on my law day and night. Doesn't that look different than so often what the world paints as strong and courageous? How often are the pictures painted of strong and courageous people being the ones who sort of don't care and they lead right out front and sort of, I'll protect everyone behind me. And it's a different image here. Joshua, be strong, press ahead, have courage, but lead the people in the way that I will show you. And that is grounded in my truth for you. In the situations that you find yourself in, whatever came to your mind when I said, imagine what shoes you're wearing right now. Is God asking you to be strong and courageous? But does it maybe look different than you thought it looked like? It's possible that for you, being strong and courageous could mean speaking out or acting in a way that is bold. But it could also mean that guided by God, strength and courage could mean bridling yourself. Strength and courage might mean not saying what you think. Some of you went, oh, shoot. Sometimes the strongest and the most courageous thing we can do is to bite our tongue. Never think about that? The strength and courage that may take. So what does strength and courage look like for those of us who follow Christ? He showed us that ultimate strength and courage is giving yourself away. There's a part of me, if I'm honest with you, that hates that. Hate's a strong word. I shouldn't say hate. There's a part of me that wrestles with that human side where I say, Jesus, couldn't there have been another way? And yet he reveals that God's way for us to be ultimately strong and courageous is to put others before ourselves. It's to be generous with our lives, to be sacrificial, to know when to say something and to know when to not. So what shoes are you wearing? For Joshua, as he strapped on those really big shoes to lead the people into a really great new place, I kind of narrow it down in a real simple way to say that God told him three things. First thing he said was, Joshua, be a leader. Whatever these shoes look like, be a leader. Whatever your shoes look like, ask God to allow you to lead in them. He told Joshua, Moses is dead. Now I've got work for you. That could apply to all of us. So be a leader. And then he said, be strong and courageous, and he reiterated it 3 different times. Be very strong and courageous. And pray about what that looks like. And finally, he kind of showed Joshua, and in the midst of being a leader and being strong and courageous, be grounded. Don't just go out there in the name of strength and courage. Be guided by me. Immerse yourself in what God wants of you. Pray often and diligently. Seek the scriptures. Seek wise counsel. Stay grounded as we go out and do the work God would have us to do. The band's going to come back up and lead us in a final song. And as they do that, I want to remind you again of these words that were in this passage where God says to Joshua, that person putting on some really, really big, daunting shoes, God says, I will not fail you or forsake you. I will not fail you or forsake you. And he says, as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. Here's good news. It's the same God. So this morning we can claim that God is wanting to tell each of us, as I was with Moses,